Why don't we get to the anniversary films right now? Can we do that?
Alien was in the top 10 box office grossing films this weekend.
It's crazy. That is so
I mean, it was
crazy.
number 10, but it grossed over $1 million.
And
not that many theaters either. Yeah,
not a lot of theaters.
Well, I mean, I saw this movie first run. I coerced. This is a terrible story, but I'll tell anyway. So my grandmother had passed away, and my grandfather was taking us kids out every weekend. And nobody was going to take me to this movie. I was 11 or 12 when it first came out or something, and my mom and dad wouldn't take me, and it was rated R. And so I convinced my grandfather. My grandfather, not his kind of film. And my sister and my grandfather's like, well, what do you kids want to do this Sunday? I'm like, oh, there's this new movie, Grandpa. It's called Alien. Oh, that sounds fine. And let's go. And we did. And I was sitting next to my grandfather. I was effing terrified. I mean, I first of all, people don't understand what it was like to see something in the theater you'd never seen before. And the realism, the verisimilitude that Alien brought to sci-fi horror. Yeah. We'd seen that in Star Wars, but it hadn't been applied to horror yet, not on the scale that Alien did. Well, and it was absolute. I was so terrified seeing that movie. And when the chest burster scene happened, I both loved it, was shocked by it, but I was more delighted by because it was so transgressive. No one had ever seen anything like that before. And it's hard to explain to people now what it was like to go into a movie theater and see things, The Exorcist, Jaws, Star Wars, Alien, Dawn of the Dead with the violence. These things had never been seen on screen before. Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And to have gone through that, it's weird to see something that you had no experience and no context, and you saw something for the very first time that was new. This movie plays just as well now, because I recently rewatched it with some friends, as it did in 1979.
Loki.
So I mentioned my dad earlier. My dad would always grab me and take me to the movies. It didn't matter whether it was a rated R movie, didn't matter what it was. RoboCop. I think I saw RoboCop when I was like 7. Absolutely loved it. I wanted to go see it because of the big fist, but we went and saw Aliens. So I saw Aliens first. And everything that stood out was the hive, the way the walls looked, the aliens. It was like a completely different world. I didn't watch Alien until I was probably 10 because of my mother. When I did see it again, what drew me the most was the ship, the jockey, the space jockey, the control room, where the eggs were. And over time, I was in my early 20s and I was in Galveston Island. I got a hold of the Necronomicon and the Necronomicon 2, which is H.R. Giger's books, signed, and they were signed. And eventually, I started trading a lot of the Giger artwork. People trade. And I'll show you something. I posted this yesterday. I don't know if you want to share it really quick.
Oh, yeah, sure.
That is called the Lady Magician. That is not a poster. That is not a print. That is the real deal. That is hanging up in my living room. Ooh. Right next to my big chap alien head. I think Paulie saw that once. I've got a big chap. Wow. It's like a 3D alien head that's sitting above my fireplace. I love Giger's style. I love Giger's art. He is the reason why we have this fear, this alien, this thing, and it's. They took a chance. Fox didn't like him. Fox didn't want him, but they pushed and they said, "This guy is the real deal. We need this guy to make this movie. If we didn't have H.R. Giger, we wouldn't have Alien. It would have been some space cockroach that we just went ah." But because of him, we got this beautiful spaceship, and we got this beautiful dead space jockey in the chair, and with the open chest. Why does it have a broken open chest? We don't know. But fear, that fear, and that oh, I can't believe I'm seeing this. Like Rob said with the chest burster, and it's just it's magic. It's all because of him and Ridley and Bannon that we got this wonderful movie, and it's a pleasure. Anytime I get to go see this in the theater, it is an absolute pleasure. I've got to see it 3 times. I saw it on the 40th anniversary. I saw it about 3 years ago when I was visiting my wife before we got married,
Mm-hmm.
and then I got to see it just the other day. So it's great. It's wonderful. 3 times in theaters, and I never thought I would see it in theaters. It's one of those movies you never think, well, 20 years down the road, you're going to get to see it in theaters. No, that's over. They're never going to bring it back. You get to see it. You get to see it not just once, but 3 times. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Tommy.
Well, as far as Alien goes, the weird thing is I think I saw Alien 3 first. I'm trying to remember.
I saw Alien 3 in the theater.
Because you got to remember when that came out and my age at the time.
Right.
And then I remember I got the trilogy VHS set. And I'm pretty sure I'd seen Alien and Aliens in between there at some point. But for some reason in my brain, I remember seeing Alien 3 first when it had come out. But Alien itself, like I just rewatched it here a couple weeks back. And it's a superb film. Now, I like to give Ridley Scott a lot of crap. But I mean, this is just one of those movies where if it wasn't for him, it wouldn't have happened, as Loki said, because, Bannon wanted, Giger, and he was not going to give up on that, but the studio wasn't going to go for that. They're like, we can't have penises and vaginas all over this movie. Right. And, it's just like, if it wasn't for Ridley, we wouldn't have got Giger. We wouldn't have got the movie that we got. And it's a classic. I mean, and I hope they're showing the original cut, not the strange director's cut. That's kind of just an oddball. Because it cuts some scenes out and then adds some others in. It's just and recolor timed. So I don't know which version they were showing in theaters, but I'm glad to see movies like this getting some attention in theaters. And it kind of reminds me of how music has been going lately, with where kids are discovering more classic music. And if you look at the music charts, sure, there's the Kanye West and Taylor Swift in there once in a while, but there's more Eagles, Michael Jackson, Pink Floyd, etc., mixed in amongst that than there is, the new stuff. So, yeah, it's kind of cool to see movies like that. And I always love to see a revival. I saw Jaws, I think it was last year, the year before, and that was a trip. So I never got to see Alien in the big screen, though. So,
well, I saw Alien this past Saturday night on the big screen. Century City AMC, sold out. Seen it with a crowd. Oh my God. I was terrified. This movie scared the shit out of me. And I've seen this movie dozens of times. I didn't see it as a kid, though. To me, even though I was already seen films, it always seemed a little too adult for me. I didn't get it. Like, it didn't appeal to me. And a couple of years later, it did. But whoa, boy, I mean, John Hurt, you just get to see his performance. You get to see everyone's performance. Even the what we call the two guys, the two truckers that are unhappy with the union, Henry Dean Stanton and Yaphet Kotto. I was absolutely great. It was gripping, but it was different because obviously it's not the same tone as Aliens. And they had a 9-minute interview before the movie with Fede Alvarez interviewing Ridley Scott.
Yeah, I didn't know they were going to do that. I would love to have seen it.
I'm sure it's going to be on YouTube at this point. It should be. They should put it up because it's a cool little 9 minutes. So I was telling Loki yesterday, I was like, did you know, because they were like some cool, kind of trivia about the film. I don't know if you knew this, Tom, but the set piece for the spaceship wasn't that big, budget restraints. So when they're like climbing in to go check out. You know, they're doing the first reconnaissance. You know, to go check
Of
out
the derelict, the alien derelict.
Right, that it was Ridley Scott's kids dressed up in the space uniforms.
Yeah.
Yep, I did know that. Yeah.
Okay,
So
you knew
they
that.
could scale it up a little bit. Yeah.
Right, yeah. So that was cool. I didn't know that.
I have my favorite story involved
Yeah.
with Alien, besides the one that most people know, and that was that the cast didn't have a clue how big the was going to be when it came out. So their reaction was genuine.
It was Cartwright.
Yeah. Goes back to actually the inception of the film when O'Bannon was writing it, and I'm trying to remember who his writing partner was at the time. But they were trying to crack how they were going to get the alien on the ship.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't figure it out in the script. They were trying to get there. And you were just talking about the movie, and it's really kind of slow moving in the beginning, even though there's a lot of stuff for us to just kind of chew on as far as like, you know, the scenery and these guys just bantering back and forth, like you said, about like Yaphet Kotto and Harry Dean Stanton bitching about their pay and all that kind of stuff. You know, so there's that going on. It isn't until like what 40 some minutes, I think, Robert, until we see the actual chest burster into the movie, and then another like 10, 15, 20 minutes before we see the full-fledged alien again. So they're building up to it, but
well, they lull you. I think what the best part about Alien is basically you're just looking at these workaday blue collar truck drivers.
Yeah.
You know, and they're oil workers. They work on this oil derrick, bringing ore back. I mean, there's no weapons on this ship.
No,
you know, and they're just. And what I love about that is, even though you're in deep space and you're on these alien planets, the main characters are us. You know, any one of us could have been on that ship on the Nostromo.
They were all very normal, right? Yeah,
right.
And it was a great choice, because if they'd made them like all scientists aware of, you know, it wouldn't have nearly been as effective, I don't think.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing, is the people who would be to make the call to keep the alien, or even let's say what's his face's character off the ship, and you know, they should have froze him like they said at the beginning, but Ash, you know, has his ulterior motives, and nobody listens to Ripley when she says, you know, we shouldn't let him on. And
that is the one thing in the director's cut. Tom,
that's the one thing in the director's cut that's different. Yeah,
that fight between
we didn't get
Lambert
that.
and Ripley. Man, Lambert just like hauls off and slaps the ever-loving crap out of Ripley. Like, why weren't you going to let us in? And Ripley's arguing with her about
like that's protocol.
About protocol. And if they would have listened,
she would have been,
face hugger, open the airlock. There you go.
Right.
Then no more movie.
Well,
Everybody
I
in
think
this shit besides Kane, Lambert, and Dallas live.
I mean, all the difference is, you know, Ash he's the one that opens the airlock, and it makes, it's the first time you realize something's up with this guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then the other guys bring up they should have froze him, and they don't.
You know,
but that was my whole story I was getting to, is that
the
whole point of getting the alien on the ship, they were just trying to figure out how to do this, because they're like, you know, they wouldn't just bring one of the eggs on, they wouldn't just bring the creature on. How could we do this? And in like, the other writer was living with O'Bannon at the time, and he had that moment, you know, where just between sleep and wake, and he just thinking about it, and he's like, oh my God, I got it. And he shook Bannon awake in the middle of the night. He goes, I figured it out. We're going to get the alien on the ship. He's like, how? The alien's going to fuck him. He's like, what? He's like, yeah, the alien's going to fuck him. He's like, no, you got to be serious. He's like, no, I am serious. It'll be like this creature that shoves a thing down his throat and implants the seed inside. And then, you know, so he goes through the whole spiel.
Right.
And they're like, boom, that's it. You know, and that's kind of the thing that brought everything together. And that also adds so much more to the, you know, the reason why they brought him back on the ship, because he's still technically alive. He's got this thing on his face. Everybody's panicking and freaking out, you know, so it works. So yeah, anyway, it's a brilliant film, and I love that story. You know?